Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of the 1991 action crime thriller film Point Break. Hold on a second, I did that last time. So, what are we reviewing this time? It's a 1991 crime film? Oh, it's Thelma and Louise. Okay, this one's not really that much of an action film, but it's more of a road trip movie. So, without further ado, cue titles. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of the Ridley Scott directed 1991 road trip crime, possibly thriller movie. I'm not entirely sure about that last one. Thelma and Louise, which, as I've just mentioned, is directed by Ridley Scott and stars Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon as the title characters Thelma and Louise. So this is the sixth film I am watching on my multiplex contemporary popular cinema course at university, and out of the first seven I've seen, because this is at the time of recording I've seen the first seven, out of the first seven, this is my favourites. This is currently my favourite. It might change by the time we get to the overall ranking by the end, but we'll see how the other films go down by then. This is also quite a strong feminist film. In fact, if this film was released today, then I'm sure a lot of anti-feminist people, most likely straight middle-aged men, would probably complain about it because they have nothing better to do. Me, on the other hand, I think this is a brilliant film. So, the plot of Thelma and Louise is as follows. Thelma and Louise live dreary lives. So one weekend they decide to get away from it and go to a cabin that belongs to a friend. With Louise, she works at a diner, but she doesn't really have an awful lot going on at the moment, apart from the fact she has a boyfriend called Jimmy, who's an honestly nice guy, though he does have a bit of a temper, as we see in the movie, but he's generally quite a nice guy, and he's honestly the second best male character of the film. Certainly the second most nicest, anyway. Thelma, on the other hand, is not so lucky. She's married to this guy called Daryl, who he's a big dick. Okay, he's a very controlling guy towards Thelma. He's very controlling towards her. He's not abusive. I don't even think he's that rude. He's just very controlling and easily angered, and has again a strong temper, but even stronger. And I suppose he likes things his own way, and he's very angry a lot of the time, so he's quite controlling in the film. Whoever they got to play the guy, I can't remember the actor's name, but whoever they got to play the guy did do a fantastic job of showing the seems to be always angry personality of this character. He just seems to be angry all the time, almost all the time, and the actor does a brilliant job with it. So Thelma and Louise, they go away to get away from their dreary lives, but on the way to the cabin, they stop off at this place where they meet this guy, who seems to be an honestly nice guy inside, but then he takes Thelma outside and then attempts to rape her. So Louise then stops him and then kills him, and then they go on the run, and the police start to try and find them. Firstly, to see if they were witnesses to the crime. Secondly, to then be as suspects of the crime, and then finally they are being chased down as the perpetrators. Heading up the investigation is a police detective played by Harvey Keitel, who is the nicest male character of the film, and he's joined by this other police detective called Max, who starts off all right, but later on he becomes a prick. Not as much of a prick as Daryl or some of the other male characters in this film, but he's certainly a prick. And I would have loved Gary Busey's character from Point Break to come in and punch this guy in this film, especially towards the end. Anyway, so Thelma and Louise make their way to Oklahoma City, and they're trying to make their way to Mexico, avoiding Texas because Louise has had some history down in Texas, and she doesn't want to go back there. So they're heading to Mexico via Oklahoma. At Oklahoma City, Jimmy meets them to give Louise some money that they'll need to get across into Mexico, though he is unaware about what they did. And they also pick up this guy called JD on the way, who turns out to be a outlaw and gives Thelma a sexual awakening as they have a relationship together. However, he then steals the money that Louise was given by Jimmy that next morning. So he then runs off, and he's sort of partly responsible for what the girls do in the remainder of the film from that point onwards. So more or less the second half. Even Harvey Keitel's character holds him partly responsible, threatens to hold him partly responsible for whatever happens. So the girls then have to, as they continue to be fugitives, Thelma, learning from JD, uses the skills she learned to rob a store and then trap a policeman in the back of his police car trunk. And the two, they keep encountering this truck guy who makes really sexual gestures towards them, so they blow up his tanker in a really cool sequence. But eventually, over the course of the movie, they are becoming more and more fugitives and more criminals, and the police are coming after them more and more. There is every single chance for the two of them to get away from the fate that the movie continues to move forwards to. They have every chance. They get contacted by Harvey Keitel's character. He offers them a deal, but they turn him down, and they keep going to Mexico. They have every chance to get out of the situation they're in, but ultimately there is only one way out without having to be arrested for murder, theft, armed robbery, theft, etc., or be shot. To avoid any of that, there is only one way out from all of that, and we'll get to the ending later. But first, the characters. I love the characters of Thelma and Louise. Not only do I think they're great characters, but when I started watching the movie, I believed I was watching characters the instant they were on screen. And that's what you want generally. And that's one of the things you want from a movie. You want to see characters on screen as opposed to actors playing characters. But yeah, I was basically immersed in the characters literally as soon as they appeared, and that was just the start. That was just the start. They hadn't even left the town by then. Heck, they weren't even preparing to go by then. They were just doing their everyday lives in the morning, and they would get ready later. So I think that's a testimony to the writing, the directing, and the acting. That I believe that these are characters literally off the bat. I'm not saying this is uncommon for other films. I'm just giving this one a particular big shout out. But yeah, I think the characters are great. Specifically Thelma, because she starts off on a more timid level. She's a timid, controlled housewife. But over the course of the movie, she toughens up and learns to be a bit more tough. And also has a bit more of a wild freedom going about when she's free of Daryl, her controlling husband, and also gets a sexual awakening thanks to JD. Probably the nicest thing he did to her. Louise, on the other hand, she's definitely the tougher of the two characters and the more headstrong character and the one who does all the planning, etc. Although she does have her sensitive sides, like when she's talking with Jimmy, and also when there is that bit where she breaks down for for about a minute when they learn that the money's been stolen by JD. So I think the two characters are great, and it's fantastic seeing the two of them develop over the course of the movie, especially Thelma, and the two of them interacting and bonding with each other. They're already friends before the movie starts, but throughout the movie they get closer together, and that makes the ending even more powerful and impactful for me, and their character journeys coming to that. Like I said, I'll get back to the ending because that's a particular bit I want to talk about later on, but I'll wrap up with the characters first. Besides Thelma and Louise, most of the cast is male, and it's a bit of a kind of a split between good male characters and bad male characters. This isn't a film that characterizes men badly. It's a look at the different types of men, how that there are a couple of good versions like Harvey Keitel's character and Jimmy, and a couple of bad versions and the different types of bad people. So let's go through a couple of them. Starting off with Daryl the Prick. He is, as I mentioned, he's a very angry and controlling person. He's not abusive, but he's far from being the best husband of all time. Like, a million miles. He's still a bit of a way from being an abusive and horrible person, but I don't think it would take too much for him to snap and become like that. But as we see in the movie, he's just controlling and angry and a big prick. So he's not he might be a bad person, but he's not an abusive person. So he's just away from those types of people, but he's still nowhere near the greatest husband of all time. Absolutely not. Jimmy, on the other hand, is a bit closer to that, or at least in the boyfriend category. He's much closer to being a better boyfriend than Daryl could be as a husband. Because Jimmy's actually a nice guy. Yeah, he does have a bit of a temper, as we see in one scene set in Oklahoma, but he's honestly quite a nice guy. He does tell the police about Thelma heading towards Mexico, but maybe he believes that she's in danger, she needs that the police want to help her, etc. Maybe he finds out about what she does, but ultimately he is still a pretty nice guy for the most parts of the film. Speaking of nice guys, that brings us on to Harvey Keitel's character, who's the best character of the film besides our main two leads. He's honestly he's in their corner. He's trying to help them. He's trying to help understand what's going on, and he's trying to make sure nothing bad really happens to them. And unfortunately for him, he does fail. So I do feel sorry for him. But I think throughout the movie, he does a really good job at trying to do this whilst also investigate the crime. So I think he's a great character. The same can't be said for his colleague Max, who is a big dick, or at least certainly later on. He's not too bad earlier on, but he's definitely a big dick later on. And I do wish that Gary Busey's character from Point Break was resurrected in order to come in and punch this guy. Actually, I think Thelma and Louise was released first, so actually Gary Busey's character would still be alive. But that's wishful thinking headcanon. Maybe that guy did end up going to LA just before the events of Point Break, so that Gary Busey could just punch him just because. Nah, that doesn't happen. That's just me doing a kind of a headcanon thing. Just trying to tie the two movies together. We finally have the rapist character who attempts to rape Thelma, and he's a bit of a slippery character. So he starts off quite a nice guy, partying with Thelma, and then eventually he takes her outside, and they're kind of like, he wants to have it with her, and it's like, oh, come on, let's do it. And then eventually he gets really tough and goes, no, we're doing it, whether you like it or not. That description of what the character does actually is based on what one of my fellow students said in one of our multiplex classes when we were talking about this film, and how the guy slips into Thelma and Louise as like this nice guy, and then eventually tries to rape Thelma, and tries to have his way with her, whether she wants to or not. And speaking of slippery characters, JD is also quite slippery, because he starts off as this really nice guy, he needs a lift, and then Thelma and Louise pick him up a bit later on, and then he's revealed to be a criminal, and he gives Thelma her sexual awakening, and then eventually he robs them. So yeah, he's a pretty of a slippery character, and he ends up being a bit of a prick later on as well, in attitude when he's with the police officers and Daryl, who's being called in to help find out a bit about his. And then later on in the police scene, he has a really nasty personality, even teasing Daryl about how he fucked his wife. Honestly, I think Thelma would still prefer to have been fucked by him than the other guy who tried to rape her. Before getting to the ending, I'd just like to mention that the cinematography and editing are brilliant for this film. We've got some amazing shots, and it's filmed and composed really beautifully and edited really nicely as well. We get a really brilliantly structured movie. We also have a really strong script, and Ridley Scott's direction is top-notch. Right, now it's time to talk about the ending. So, as I mentioned earlier, Thelma and Louise had every chance to possibly get out of the situation they were in, but as the movie kept going, it was looking more and more obvious that the final outcome, which has become quite famous in movie history now, the movie is almost 30 years old, it will be 30 later this year, it's quite a famous ending, and yeah, as the movie progressed, that outcome was more and more certain as we progressed, and they had less and less opportunity to get away from that ending. Basically, what happens is that with the police closing in on them, including Harvey Keitel's character and Max the Prick in a helicopter, and soon the girls are surrounded by them on one side, and the Grand Canyon on the other side. They reach the Grand Canyon, but they're surrounded by cops who are prepared to shoot unless they surrender. So they decide to keep going, and they drive off the edge of the Grand Canyon. And we see the car mid-flight as it's gone off the cliff, and it's mid-air, and the movie kind of does this white fade thing. And then we cut to a montage of clips from throughout the movie of the two girls whilst the credits roll, and that's basically the end of the movie. Now, usually, I would hate endings like this, where they just stop when they feel like the plot is over, when they think that's the end. They just want to stop the plot. They just want to stop the movie as soon as they think the plot's ended. Heck, they don't even show the car crashing into the Grand Canyon. We just presume they're dead because the car is in mid-flight when the movie stops. So usually I hate endings like this, where as soon as the plot seems to have finished, heck, even if it hasn't even finished, the movie will just stop. They just stop. No aftermath, no consequences, not even a proper ending in some cases, where they just feel like the need to stop early. It feels like there should have been a little bit afterwards that would have just made a better ending. So usually when films just stop without a good or proper ending, I hate the endings of those films. And sometimes, in fact more often than not, it drags the entire film down for me. Usually more the ending itself, but it will probably almost certainly affect the rest of the movie as well, or at least to some degree. Except for this film, and maybe there's a few other exceptions as well, but I haven't found those ones yet. I've mostly been stuck with the ones that do it wrong. Thelma and Louise, although I would like to have seen the consequences and the aftermath of this, or at least the reaction of Harvey Keitel's character, Max the Prick, and maybe some of the other cops before the car went over the cliff. Despite all that, because the character development and the tension and the emotional weight have been building so much throughout the film, this ending works. This is actually a very good way of how to do an ending where it just stops as soon as the plot ends, as opposed to other examples I've seen where it just feels like there should have been a bit more to it. There should have been a little bit more at the very end, at least to some sort of finish it up, as opposed to just stopping when they feel like it. If it wasn't for those pro points I've just mentioned, then Thelma and Louise would be a prime example of that. But thankfully, they do it right, and it works really well and really effectively. I do wonder what the consequences and the aftermath are, but still, the way it has been handled with this film, it is earned. It works, and it's honestly great, as opposed to the other times I've seen it happen where it doesn't work, and it sometimes drags the movie down in opinion. Well, in my opinion. Not here though, this is the exception, or one of the few exceptions anyway. So, with that being said, on to the conclusion. Thelma and Louise is a brilliant film with some great characters, great cinematography and editing, great execution with spectacular direction from Ridley Scott, plus a great script that it was able to make a great film out of, and with an ending that on principle I should hate, but in execution it's actually really great. And no wonder it's become an iconic ending in movie history, because it is such a great ending and works really well on the emotional and character level. And that's on top of an already great movie with lots of already great moments throughout and some really great stuff going for it. So I will be giving Thelma and Louise an easy 10 out of 10. Yeah, this is a brilliant film. This is a classic for a reason. This is just absolutely amazing, absolutely a great ride, and really enjoyable. Go and check it out. It gets high recommendations from me, or at the very least, go and watch the ending in clips. It's not the only great scene in the movie. It's probably the most famous, but it's certainly one of the best scenes of the movie, but it's not the only one. There's a ton of great scenes, and heck, even big portions of the movie are really great, especially the middle. I really enjoyed the middle in particular. when they were in Oklahoma City and with Jimmy and JD tagging along for a bit, while Harvey Keitel was talking with Daryl and trying to find the girls. So there was some. So there's been so this movie is just absolutely brilliant. Strong recommendation for me, and thank you for watching this review. Next time will be another two female duo buddy film. This time a coming of age movie from 2019, Booksmart. What is my opinion of that film? Stay tuned to find out next time. Until then, or whatever else comes up next, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and so this film I'm watching for is the this film this film most likely middle-aged. Louise doesn't, but on the way, this guy's but on the way to the hang on. Excuse me. Somehow burping caused me to have a block on my tongue. At Oklahoma City, Jerry meets them. Jimmy, sorry. There is only one way out by the end of the hall. And that's one of the good things he did. I'll get all that. He's still like 1,000 miles from being abusive. As for this, and I really wish Gary Busey's character from Point Break did come back to punch this character. So yeah, and he starts off as this slippery, slimy character. Some of this was actually what we talked about in one of our classes about that last little bit is definitely. And we got a strong script written by the writers, so I think it. And we also got a really strong script, and Ridley Scott's direction is brilliant. Oh crap! And including Harvey Keitel's character in a helicopter, along with Max the Prick. Hang on. So Thelma and Louise decide to just keep going. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to get shot. So they decide to keep going. They drive off the edge of the Grand Canyon, and then we cut to clips of the where we stop the plot. Not here. This film totally fine. In fact, not here though. Perfect. Not here though. Brilliant. And so, with that out of the way, and a great script, that it was able to. So I will be giving Thelma and Louise an easy 10 out of 10. I'll do that again. What is my opinion of that film? Well, for starters, it's nowhere near as good as this film, but I'll cut that.